So I thought for this week, maybe I'm interested to hear what you folks think we should be doing. Just to get your thoughts. Just what's the next step, right? And so then we're gonna do, I know I told you folks to do like 10 sentences to describe how to do something. And so we might push that to Wednesday. But I might share an example of what I started. I'm almost up to my last sentence. And then, but I thought, so we'll start with just to sort of talk about like, what should we do next? What should we be working on? And then there's this kind of condensed version of Yéil, ʼaan, which I'm sure you've seen before, but I want us to go through that and just do a little bit of translation exercise. And then back to the perfective, probably with the thematic on it. So my goal, my plan is to just sort of keep thinking of prompts that we can start off the class with, although sometimes we start off with just checking in English, just to make sure that we're feeling okay. But then to have these conversation prompts and activities to use the language, and then to kind of just go through these, how to construct these verb modes with a focus on the prefix and then the stem, and then rolling through the subject. Because the object is, you know, it's one more thing to remember, but if it affects the whole verb less in terms of pushing the way everything starts contracting together and everything. How does that sound?
Hell Kadain Hosaku Ade Kakshachi Dia Awe sentences. I think we're doing these 10 sentences things, which I think is really helpful. But maybe if we had like a day to deconstruct, like, oh, how did you put that sentence together? You know?
Yeah, I do think we should start sharing the sentences on our screen. Just, I think it helps us to read it and hear it at the same time, even though ideally you could just tell us and we'll just listen and hear it and understand. But then I think it helps all of us to just sort of, like, I'll show you what I'm thinking in terms of how we start pushing these sort of language sharing moments. Because sometimes it's sort of spur of the moment stuff, like ask these questions or figure this thing out. But then sometimes I think it's going to be helpful to just do like these, like a 10-sentence narrative and then a 10-sentence explanation of how to do something. But then to have, you know, like I'll show you what I was putting together. That way you can sort of see it. And then we could maybe put these, we can share these presentations with each other. And then sometimes also take a look and say, here's a couple of things that might improve this sentence or this particular area. So I think that would help. Because yeah, all it takes is just like one word. If we don't all know that one word, then sometimes we all might be a little lost. Like, okay, it's the something, something, blank, something, something. So, like, yeah. Any other thoughts?
Well, I was just going to say it would help me to see people when they're saying something. So people are kind of doing their presentation and all I can see is a black screen. And I just in terms of understanding what they're saying, it would be good to see them doing it. Eh?
Okay, yeah, and we'll try. And if there's some reason, like if you don't want your camera on or can't have it on or whatever, at least give us maybe some pictures. So we'll start doing either like a video if you can, but at least let's put a picture up that helps us to make the link with what you're saying to the thing. Sounds good.
I was with what I was putting together, I was having trouble figuring out how you would explain a lot of it. I mean, it's like starting from the blueprints of a Yaukyadi to, and it's just like jumping from, you know, so it's not teaching you every step, but more or less parts of it that, I don't know how you'd explain it in Tlingit. I mean,
well, yeah, so There's a couple of things. One is there's our own abilities as a learner. And so sometimes like we don't know how to say all these different things. But then also like we haven't been like writing how-to manuals in Tlingit for 50 years. So sometimes like we just don't know how to do the thing. So I think my one recommendation is to keep the thing really small. So to keep it really, really small. And then to also don't expect that at the end, we're going to be able to run out and build a canoe, right? But instead, it's just sort of more general overview. Like here's the basic thing that you need to sort of look at. For example, mine is focusing on how to take an old piece of audio and to clean it up. So that's something that I do a lot of. And so I want to just show a couple, but I'm not going to talk about like how to dial in a compressor. And it's just like, no. I can tell you that stuff in English, but this is just sort of like, okay, you do this, and then you do that, and you do this thing, and then you do that. But then it's kind of up to you too, because for me, it's a fun exercise because it's domain recovery, right? We used to teach in our language, but now we don't. We teach our language, but then to use it as the vehicle to teach through is fun, but it's also going to be, I'm just trying to think of new challenges just because we got to find all these blank spaces and fill them up with stuff. So we can always do like a thread of emails. I kind of tried this thing. It was kind of funny because there was a YouTube comment on one of the videos last week that said, what's that program called? It's like, do you have a Discord for your students? And I didn't know what a Discord was. So I was thinking, what is this person asking? Like, do I have a conflict with my students? Are we out of harmony? I was like looking in the dictionary, and then I just did a internet search. I was like, oh, it's like an interface, right? And so I set up this thing called Discord, which is kind of interesting, but it's really, so we can, the thing about doing these projects is I don't expect you to like, it's not like in Cake, they told me they teach their kids about survival like this at their culture camp. This is what they used to do. This is what they told me. They said, we give them a potato, and we give them a pocket knife, and we take them on an island, and we go pick them up the next day. And so it's nothing like that, right? Because let's do all this stuff together. So if you hit any spots where you're not sure, just ask. And I might not know, but we'll do our best to figure out how to do that thing. And you got a couple decisions, like as you do these little tiny kind how-to manuals, are you going to write this in the second person or a command form? And it's up to you. It's kind of a fun thing. I haven't done it before, so I was having fun with it.
Une, when I did that how to cook a porcupine little book, and Chukatine helped me, I noticed, like I went and looked at it again, and I see when she was helping me, she kind of put things into the first person future, like you will do this, you will do that.
Yeah. So like a second person future makes a lot of sense. So like you're going to do this, you're going to do that, you're going to do this. A first person future makes sense as well, because sometimes it's maybe you just have pictures of yourself and you're like, okay, now I'm going to cut this thing off and now I'm going to tie this around, and so yeah, it's a really interesting kind of language choice, because I found that I was not using commands, but I was more comfortable with a future, which is like if I read a manual, I think English is just different, right? Because it'd be like, okay, put this here, put that there. So it would be commands. But if it were Tlingit, it'd all be kind of unusual verbs.
Aadé Yéi Daaduneiyí, it was actually the second person.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. It makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, okay, you're going to do this, you're going to do that, you're going to do this. And that makes sense.
I did it more like a demonstration, like I sew this, and it could be I sewed it, I'm sewing it, I sew it, so it's like while we're doing it along with me. So but it did take a while to figure out what mode to use. Like What am I trying to say?
Okay, fun. Yes, yeah. So use whatever works for you. Like, we're gonna get it. You know, it's gonna be fun.
I wanted to do one on how do you make a cake into a Jell-O cake. And part of that, you know, is poking holes into the cake. And so I was looking for poke, and the one that looked best to me was inject.
Oh, yeah.
But then it says inject medicine. So I copied that, put it in my little document. I'm going to take out medicine and put Jell-O there, and it'll be inject Jell-O. So, you know, it's Lego primers, you know, it's just trying to find the right verb, and then I think that one was in the imperative.
Mhm.
So I'm going to have to decide what tense. And I really like English grammar, so all that stuff, verb, subject, verb agreement, and which person and all that part makes sense to me in Tlingit, and I enjoy trying to figure that out. But it is time consuming, especially, you know, for me, I can't see anything, so everything takes a lot longer. But I'm plugging away. Wednesday works fine.
Okay. Well, one option would be kashawash, which would be the command form for make a hole.
Oh, make a hole. That's different than poke, huh?
Yeah, but yeah, so it's you know, so it's always interesting to think about how to, and I only know that one because I think they talked about it in that Yéil story where they were boring holes through the sticks so they wouldn't turn to stone. But then if you go to the verb dictionary, you'll see. So if you look up hole, and then you go down and you see make holes. So, and here your sample sentence is, I made holes in the window with a shotgun. I think you just sort of made the window into a hole, but you know, whatever. But so here you have wash. So going back to our perfective exercise, when we look at that, it's in the perfective, it's short and high. So now we know it's zero conjugation. So therefore, kashawash is what we should expect for the command form. So we're going to get to the command form too, because you can also predict what the stem is going to be with the command form.
So which dictionary is this one in?
This is the verb dictionary, the Naish story.
Okay.
Yeah, and so maybe it is, so maybe it is birdshot, but if you use a shotgun to make holes in the window, maybe the window's made out of, well, okay, the old one, so this word chawaqi comes from chai waq. So it's the eye of the sweat lodge, because they used to put a bear gut over it to make a little window. So chawaqi, from chai waq, you get chawaqi. So that's where the word comes from. So maybe they were just shooting through that bear gut with a shotgun. Or, you know, I'm not a very good carpenter. I might try this method, so.
Good as cheese. It was you know, challenging, but it's really is fun. It just takes forever.
Yeah, and whenever we're doing stuff like this, our goal is never to be perfect. It's just to try it out and see if we can convey it. And then also collectively, I'm just always like, where are our blank spots and how do we fill those? How do we make sure that we can say what we don't know how to say? And then there might be stuff where we got to go ask somebody, you know, but let's do our best.
It's always the hokey pokey too, eh? Yitlatsu. Barb Hobbes was talking about that verb, planting with a stick, eh? Katlitsu, like that.
Yeah. So shetzak is the singular, and it's to move a stick, right? So it's shetzak is to move your hand.
Right. Right. Raise your hand as if in voting. Yeah.
Dak Yéi Daaduneiyí, that song. Dak Yéi Daaduneiyí, Aadé Yéi. So push that boat out. But then it's going to be tsu is the plural form of that. So now you're moving these plural stick-like objects. So that's why you say dak yishitsu yijin, kuch yishitsu yijin. So dak is in front of the body and kuch is back behind the body. And then, and that's why anchkashsu, that village has that verb root in its name, because you're moving stick-like objects. Like you're going to take the planks off of the clan house and you're going to go build your fish camps, and then you're going to bring them back. And so that's why the temporary migration is a tsu as a verb root. Okay.
There we go.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. I was going to say, you just reminded me of something. I was, it's the same verb actually, but it was Flagoon's Shagoon video. I was working on it a bit the other day, and when her husband died, how she put it was "Ach nak wudlitsu." He basically, when I looked it up in Nation Story, it was he packed up his stuff and moved away temporarily. Eh? It was kind of, but yeah, "Ach nak wudlitsu," she said. Eh?
Yeah, which you could interpret that loosely as he left me behind for a little bit, right? Because we're going to get, because the tsu implies that they're coming back, but in this case, it's more like they'll join up, right? Which is really powerful, really powerful.
And also think of the English expression, I'm going to like up sticks or pick up sticks and leave or something. It's sort of a similar idea. It's like, take my stuff with me.
Right.
I was thinking, I'm trying to feel like comfortable, and this is the reference guide, and you have all the verbs in here. I would like to be able to have a toolbox of verbs that are not infinite. That I could use a lot and get comfortable with. And because if we, when especially when we're using new forms or modes of verbs, it's like things just start to, it's like, oh, different stems, different forms, and it's like I still haven't mastered these guys. So anyhow, that is my sort of inchoate longing, is to like, okay, I know something and I know them well enough to use them with confidence. So I don't know how you do that as a teacher, but that's one of my.
Yeah, that's a good point. So like a couple of years ago in Tesla and Whitehorse, we were just sort of talking about like, what are the most common verbs and what are the most useful ones? And we just kind of made this list and then blasted them out. And so like the main things, like to be able to communicate, I think you need to know, do it, don't do it, doing it, not doing it, did it, didn't do it, will do it, won't do it, right? And those aren't, it's not always do, but it's those sort of modes, right? And so this reference guide sort of just focuses on those, right? And then doing me, us, you, or I, us, or I, we, you, y'all, them plural, and then people. And so trying to just sort of but you end up with a bit of a complicated sort of structure. But then the idea was to have a quick reference guide so people could just look them up and then eventually just start memorizing them. So that's goal number one, is just memorize how to say this thing, right? So kukwagoot and kukkigoot and gachtuat. And so, and then eventually to start sort of looking for those patterns. So then you start saying, oh, well, gachtu is we're gonna, and kukki is you're gonna, and kukwa is I'm gonna. And then sort of And then as we go through these exercises, we're starting to sort of look at, here's all the parts. When you start moving this, these are all the mechanics of everything that happens. And so it's still just sort of playing on this idea of like memorizing stuff, but then revealing the underlying patterns so that eventually like, we just need to be able to talk, and we just need to be able to like say a number of sort of things. And then once we get those patterns, then we'll be able to look at a new verb and we'll become sort of verb detectives. Like as soon as we see it, we'll be able to just encode a bunch of information about it. And so it was kind of fun, because that's where Zeosh and I, like years ago, we'd be talking and I'd be like, oh, that must be ga. Okay, that's a ga verb. Okay, now we could do all these different things with it. But then for now, like that reference guide is intended to be just sort of a quick, like I just need to know how to say it. Then you just find that verb and look it up. But yeah, sheesh. Okay, so yeah, we're just sort of talking about what kinds of things we need, just doing a little loose check-in here. And then our 10 sample sentences in terms of like describing how to do something. We'll start sharing those on Wednesday. We're not trying to be perfect. We're gonna try and use some visuals, like so preferably like some sort of pictures or something that just help us along, so that, and then to make sure that we can all see your sentences as you're reading them. I think that will help a lot of us. And then maybe when we're done, let's just not be afraid to say, I don't know what that word was, just that we can catch it. Because I think it's important to sometimes just stop and just, and if we're trying to stay in Tlingit for a good 45 minutes to an hour, then just make a note. And then when we come out of Tlingit, just ask what that word was. Okay, so then I thought today would do a little impromptu translation exercise. I think you've seen this before. I think you might know the basics of the story. And then we're gonna go back to the perfective. But anybody got any other thoughts on what should we be doing? I'm always curious too, because I'm just like, whenever we get to advanced Tlingit, it's always interesting for me, because you guys are getting up to this point where I'm like, I don't know what we do now, because we're trying to take people to higher and higher levels of fluency, and getting people along the beginning track and even the intermediate track is kind of clearer for me. But when we get to the advanced, we're all just, everyone, and we're all at different phases too. So trying to make sure that we're helping everybody and we're all doing something collectively is just stuff I think about all the time.
I was wondering about like math, in a sense of like when you're building something to scale, like I'm sure they did a long time ago. It was just kind of building it, but now you can do it in a class and you're using like inch and 11/16 or 7 5/16. Would you just say that like that? Because math is pretty universal, but there was ways of doing it in Tlingit, right? I mean,
yeah, though I don't think we've fully come to consensus yet. And I could check with Nakashan, who's teaching math through Tlingit right now. But for fractions and for multiplication. So I know there's been talk about like, maybe like Wuchin Katechit might work, but that's really like they're breeding. So I don't know if that's exactly the right term, but just to start talking about these things, certainly like qa is used. So you could say like, you could either say qa or qa, which is by ones, dakhqa by twos, naskqa by threes. So you could certainly do that. So you're kind of counting by threes or fours or tens or whatever. But then when we start getting into, and then maybe like wushdachkachtuchash maybe could work for division. But yeah, so that's interesting for now. You might just convey like fractions and stuff. Like I was trying to tell my daughter today, like it's a 2-to-1 ratio. And like, that was really challenging. So I just said, 2 to 1. Just, you know, and so we need to engage in some of those conversations and talk about how to do that, because those ratios and those other things they're going to be important. So if you're saying, okay, this is 1/20th the size of the canoe, so whatever this thing is, you're going to measure that by 20. And I don't know if the vocabulary is there yet, but we could certainly start to craft it. But this is where, again, if the language isn't there yet, you might step back and just pick a different aspect of the process to focus on.
Yeah, like maybe just say that fraction and then the rest of it in Tlingit. Huh?
Mm-hmm.
That would work really good, because you don't have a ruler that says any of that in Tlingit.
Yeah, right. It's like, yeah, we gotta start making this stuff. The Tlingit ruler. There's a word. We gotta find the word. There's a word for inch.
Well, I think we need to decide metric or imperial.
Oh, that's true, right? Oh yeah, because we have the Ginjichuan Kuuyak. Well, we could do like the USGS. I guess in the 80s, they kind of, something happened where the US decided to convert to metric. And then I think Ronald Reagan stepped in with like a dinosaur and a machine gun and Jesus and like stopped it. And so the USGS settled on tenths of a foot. So that we're doing this project in a stream, and we had to measure with this. They gave us this thing to measure with, but then we had to convert it to both, because we had to write it in the metric system, because we're using science. It just works so much easier with the metric system. But then we also had to write it in when we had to write both in tenths of an inch and in actual inches. But anyways, kutaka. I thought there was another one about like a person's finger. Oh,
Tekak. Yeah, tekak kashu kakus. I was trying to write 1.5 inches equals 1 foot.
Oh.
Because that's like the standard for a model, like right now.
Uh-huh.
1.5 inches on a model drawing is 1 foot in real life. So you had the plans, you can make it. I mean.
Oh, okay. So take ek ak ka ashu away is how much?
1 foot.
Yeah, 1.5 inches is 1 foot. Or 1.5 inches equals 1 foot.
I would think it'd be something like that. Oops, Clake. Let's just say. Oh, it does. I know I messed up on Clake. Clake ek ak ka ashu away. Clake ka booze. But that again, that away, that's the part where I'm like, because it's sort of like that is. So we need something to talk about, like the corresponding sort of thing, like for this thing, but for that thing, it's this. So
could you use that verb tu'uaya?
Yeah. But well, tu'uaya, it's as if, right? Yeah. So and Nawea has been studying like both math and Tlingit for a long time. So he and I have talked about some of these things as well. And so, yeah, that I think that would work, and that, especially if you had like the drawing of the like say you had the model on one side, then you had the actual thing on the other side, and there's different ways you could sort of visually represent that, and then we would just sort of get it, because the visual thing does a lot for us too. Like even on a map, you just see numbers on one side, numbers on the other. It doesn't have to say 1 inch equals 1 mile. We just sort of look at it and we can sort of get it. So.
You have someone holding it and then someone standing next to it. 2 different pictures.
Okay. And kaya might be the model, right? Yak kaya, like the canoe pattern. Okay.
Were you going to show us your sentences of trying to teach something, or were you saving that for Wednesday?
No, I'll show you what I started. Just so you can, just as an example, not to show you like how it must be done. But so here we have Kayuk Atunk Dat Yejene. Yisitin Weka Chagudachaya Achu Atlet Ka Hastu Tawasaku. Yashukat Ku Yukatungi Hasakaushahit. Yata Akach Weka Wash Atunachaya Yukakwatan. Naka Yatakate. Atuchaya Katuchit do Yukatungi. Yadu Chag Owe Hachutat Hasua at Wekakusti Haskan Kashint. Yata away Yach away Hasakaushahit Hachaku Kaku Yukatungi. Yadu Clay Kakinach wax cylinder, you do a saw. You do a saw go at Yata Koa Kahis. Frederica de Laguna Yata a cook kaushahit. Ya Hayukatungi. Chago Kaku Dach on goon kayak dat. Yat atin we do achchi. Kauduchihiti at dat yejechane. Adobe Audition, you do a sago at. Yat atu tachik e. One kanins shagao away waits. Yachdu achchi at akayata ach akuch saha. Yata away chago dach ayi. Kahel hatua ushku wukuts. Achawe kashuk ayi atu de yegachtu sene. Yat atinye jechane. Hesh ulzi away cassette eich away CD kate kakwashahid. Just play the hin away at kakwachech. Yat atsu ach jiwo. Gwash dak unjan kachu hichen awa achu a Tlingit has to Yéil wutien. Keuchne ka honey ka kuch. Has to Yéil wuti atayach. Ampex task cam you do sago at has to ayaka ampex. Ya do achita kate we an yejachanetsu. Gash atu nachyuch atutle atki at atu de kakwatzak. Gash do achji at dat yejachwane an. Ya addition we gwash ach tuasaku a ya nach shagao we do achji at achawe compressor an yejachane. Ya do ya we do achji away to teen yata teen. Yisitin yak wasa shagao. Ach tuasuku tlach shagao. Kua ʼaan yachgeti at away kudach shagao. Kesh ach tua ushka. Aka a itkawe yata yan yejechwane yak. A itkawe isotope you do a sago at. We ach kakwasaha we dasa keshach tua ushkudu achchi. Ye owe.
Gonna cheese test question way technology dot.
Ye owe. Ya yata audition shukwa. Wasa achtua sagu shagao. Ya dasa kesh ushkawa at ayanach shagao. Akash the katat klilzi dein oedu achch. Yata koa we konachike koa kashlitzin. Kesh ushzi koa we ka dasa kesh hatua ashkudu achchi. Ach akuch saha. Yeah, wow.
Cheesh.
So, if I'm like I did one on Huxley, it basically pick the berries, clean the berries, wash the bowl, you know, like that. Eh? It's to me, it wasn't that simple, but it's a lot simpler than what we just saw there. Eh? You know, like for Wednesday, it's 1, 2, like this. Eh?
Yeah, for anything that we do, I'm always say, find your comfort zone and go one step past it, and that's it. And so we won't. And so for me, like I wasn't sure what to do, but I was like, I was presenting on this stuff to another class right before today anyway. So I was like, oh, I'll just talk about this. But then I was like, oh, how would I talk? Because then it's kind of hard to talk about like how to apply audio compression and noise reduction to an old recording. So, you know, don't follow my example. Like your example should probably be more straightforward, right? Just like how to do something. I should have done like how to wind an old tape up when it gets caught in your Walkman or something. Okay.
Kakli adat kachshechit.
You can't.
Naskeki aya kakli kakli. Just hat aya kakli. Achitki telkatin hast du to ashka.
Hochly competition.
Wush kagede kagachtu hakut. Oh, wush kagede is competition.
Kakpatlak.
Okay, Johan. You go ahead one. Okay, you guys want to do a couple translation sentences? Okay. So I'm sure you wait. Aadé Yéi Daaduneiyí. Aqoyat achtuasagu, which in gachtutu, ki nach, gulteka nach, yashukwa ayi, achtuasagu ki nach kakitu, Aadé, aqaqay kay aqo awe, akakinik, ye awe, gwalkashisaku, heshwasaka kwati, just ye naqa, ach itidishe. So I was thinking you guys have probably heard this, probably seen it. This is a mashup of Kaskei, Kitianai, and Shadar. And so it's kind of just brings together different elements of their telling of this story, ʼaan. But what I'd like us to do is one at a time, just read it out loud, translate what you can, and just say, help, and then we'll help you with whatever else you might not get. So the way I like to do this is wherever you see the end of a sentence, that's where you stop. So read up till the end of the sentence, and then just give us a translation. Let's go first.
I will. Yeah, on gaslaku itdach awe. Following this flood, or after this flood.
Okay. Yeah, what?
This aya dasa Aadé Yéi Daaduneiyí ya Tlingit ani cook. There wasn't anything left on Tlingit land or
When we have that apostrophe, it's the world.
Ah, okay.
Yéil. There's nothing left after it on this world. Yéil. Okay. It'ka.
Gwash ach idga kuha. Just a cut at kwa a kayeuti. It was everything on it.
Yéil. Okay. Itia.
Chetke. Yakan. Tesa yakan atuye uti and yaas. Kayawatsk. This fire. There wasn't fire inside of the trees or the bushes.
Okay. Yéil. Anything anybody want to talk about or ask about on this first page? Okay. Okay. Atusa itet.
Klesh dasa ach akugan. Is
Okay.
that the end of it? It's not clash. Dasa is, what is it? Ach akugan. I'm not sure.
So when we got teshtasa, those will come together and usually be nothing, but then it'll push the verb negative as well. So it does both of those things, right? So you could say like chwasaku, kesh chwasaku. And so I know, I don't know, kesh dasa chwasaku. I don't know anything, right? So I usually translate that as, well, it could go either way. You could say sometimes it works best to have nothing, and then sometimes there's anything, and then the verb is negative, right? What about akugan? Yuhan? Anybody?
Is that no sun? Kagan?
That would be kagan, which is related. Kagan pulls from this verb root, so does audagan.
It's like something about there was nothing you could start a fire from or something?
Nothing burned there, right? So here you've got keshdasa, which is nothing. Ach akugan. So if you took the dasa out there, you would kesh ach akugan. It's not burning there, right? So in this case, the ach is locating it somewhere. So yeah, nothing burned there. Okay. Itia atusa. Okay, get everybody to read one.
Kunach.
Kunach kullachet shan achu ayakan kach datin we takai.
Okay. What do you think, folks?
Very.
Yeah, it's very scary.
Oh.
What about ayakach datin?
To see something in the future, we'll see something.
Everything you've seen.
There's a suffix on there. I'll give you that hint. So if we just sort of saw this as a suffix and then that, it might help us see it. And then you've got the ayah. And so if we look at, so here's the conjugation business going on right here. But if we skip it, ayah dati. What's that sound like?
Wind.
Yeah, well.
Oh, Aadé.
Yaudati. Yeah. So with a yaudati, you can also have ayaqahdatin. Okay. And what about this taqayi business? So this is a noun. It's just a noun. So there's nothing, but there's an unusual vowel thing going on here. So
I thought that was mosquito, but mosquito has two A's, right?
yeah, that would be taqa. And if you want to have like somebody's mosquito, you would have taqayi. So it would end with short and low vowels, A, Y, I.
Okay.
But there is a cool thing that happens here. So if we have te, when we put a suffix onto te, what happens? Does anybody know?
It goes to
It
take.
gets long.
It'll go long and low, right? So what happens is it goes long and low, right? So there's something that's kind of funky that goes on here. That's a bit of a interesting thing. And what is, so then we have ka, which is a point. So when you add something to the end of te, it'll push it to become te, right? Like te chisani. But then when it becomes part of a compound, there's this other kind of weird thing where the EI contracts to an A. That's what happens here. So you kind of have this vowel lengthening, which isn't unusual, but you have a vowel shift, which is unusual, but it does happen. Just like in dak, eo, adi becomes dak, awedi. We see that shift there to an A. So taka is a rocky point.
Oh, craw. Okay. Tekra.
Yeah, well, so we put it all together. It's very frightening among them when it is stormy. That rocky peninsula, which they're talking about, the Aleutian Islands. This story takes place right after Raven rebuilt the world, and including throwing some rocks out at the end, or some sand that becomes the Aleutian Islands. Okay, Aitia.
Well, chat.
Kanshish.
At dakin away, yan dakin away tle, Yéil kuda say gak. Ach. So, ach it is chic one, but at that place, he's sitting
Okay.
away. That sitting, that is then crow, he was resting just kudasegak. Repeatedly resting, that's just a guess. Just there.
Okay. So qeen is for plurals to sit. Like, so you could say ja'atuqeen. We're just sitting there, right? Or I guess but in this case, when you have the da in front of it, now that should get our minds thinking about a singular flying, right? So at-daqeen, but it's an unusual form. Usually we're going to hear like wudakin or yandakin or guchdakin. But that D classifier is what sort of pushes us to think about this different verb. But it is kind of an unusual way to say it. So at daqin awe, yan daqin awe, kla Yéil. So instead of like saying like he flew there, or you're sort of like saying he was flying, you know, or like, and so you're kind of talking about the verb happening, and it's becoming a bit of a noun type of a thing. Like, so he maybe he flew there. Yan daqin away is like he went all the way there, he made it. So the yan, when that pops up, either yan or yach in front of a verb as a low tone, that means it's to completion. Like you could say Yéi Daaduneiyí, I worked on it. You know, Aadé Yéi Daaduneiyí, I worked on it. Aadé Yéi Daaduneiyí, I finished working on it. I got it. And that's why you get yanuane as opposed to wune, right? So then we got, yeah, Yéil, crow, raven. Anybody see this verb before? The root here is saw, and then you get this at the end. It's an unusual verb. There's a couple of these verbs, but it actually means to remove something. So it's a little bit unusual. But in this case, it means to catch your breath. Right, so this is catching your breath right here. This is just one of these, there's a few verbs in Tlingit where it's just like, you just gotta remember that one and not get into too many of the parts when you break it down. And then cha'ach is just there, right? So he flew there. When he finished the raven, he's catching his breath just there.
So the say though is the breath, right?
Yeah, the saw, right? So like, and so that's where you get like the seok, breath, dach the seok, a breathing thing. Yeah. And then chisa, you know, you also have a resting verb from there. But then when you put this on there, it's like sitting there because the breath is gone. And so that's where, and it's interesting to look at sometimes the logic behind it. Like instead of catching your breath, it's like the breath is gone. So he's just there. Okay. But it was a long way, flew out. And okay, we'll go ahead. Yata, atusa kakwatu. Has anybody not read yet? Cook.
Cha nasti awe sa unaye wagut. That was a long time ago.
Yeah, but it could be used of one of two ways. It was a long time ago, or for a long time.
Okay. Let's say for a long time. Nasti, something was away. Sa gunaye sounds to me like to begin something. I don't know. And uagut is to grow up or to grow.
What?
Uh-huh.
But if this
good, uagut went. Uagut went. He began to go somewhere for a long time. He began to go somewhere.
Good. Yes. So yeah, absolutely. But when we have qunaye in front of it and there's no direction or anything, that's just like started walking. Right. So we can also really zoom into like the action, especially for motion. Like, oh yeah, then it started driving, it started walking, it started crawling. And that's how you would do any of those, is you wouldn't need to put any direction in front of it, and you just say ʼānayéi or ʼānay, then her child started walking, right? Okay, what about, anybody got any other thoughts on this? Nasti. What are some other ways we see this verb, nasti? And then this underline X should be a big hint.
Well,
That's city.
locator.
Yeah, well, in this case,
Place. Time or place, location, sort of fixing it.
or with the city verb, putting what's the thing, when it became this thing, right? So you could say,
For a long time.
for example, if you said, when they became a teacher, right? So it's getting to be a long time. And then the sa, when that pops up, it's sort of like only when that thing, then this other thing. So that's what the sa usually does. It's like only after it had been a long time, he started walking. So he was really tired. Any thoughts or questions about this page? Okay, go. Not two.
Wasa kawahai at ayu.
Sheesh.
It's something like, what is that thing over there? Or what is that? Yeah, that thing I see over there, or what is?
Okay. So this kawaha, like you could say, "Iide kakonik, wasa hakakawaha." I'm going to tell you what happened to us. So it's sort of like, what is happening? So this kawahaiat is like something that's happening. So kawaha is like for something to happen. But it's a not that common, but it's just a way to say like, and so in terms of a question, you're like, what is happening there? What am I seeing? There's something happening. What is it, right? So we could probably put this in quotation marks because he's probably thinking this. You know, there's different ways to interpret that. There's probably Yéil like sitting there thinking about what's going on. But it could be the storyteller asking us as well, or just using it as a device, like, what is it? What is it? Type of a thing. Okay. Aitia, Gook.
De kide duwatin anake akaganji wekan. The fire, right? That fire.
That fire.
And something could be seen, the duwatin.
Yeah, what?
And the kide, is it towards upward, or is that something above?
Dicky, but Deki is way out to sea.
Okay, could be seen. Something way out to sea could be seen. And the shift, the rest of it.
Okay, anybody have a thought on Anachke Akaganji?
Something burning?
Yeah, it's burning, and so Anach is like along there. It's sort of over there. So Dekide, so duatin really works well for like it can be seen. And if you put yach in front of it, that means it looks like it, right? So you could say chu uwa ya, but that's getting into a bit of a metaphor where you could just say well, it looks like something's burning over there. So, you know, that's where you could say Yachduatin, or you could say it looks like, you know, and so there was a story about the beaver scratching its way down the tree because it couldn't climb. And then they said, it looks like something is all broken up. So then the Yachduatin gets put in there. But in this case, it can be seen way out to sea. Anach ke akakanji. Its flames are just really firing up, right? We'an. And so this J comes from the CH, like it just keeps on burning. It's just really burning up over there. And then the fire. Okay. Oh, Guk. Yati ai jiwu. Yit ha asa.
Ayayayidat yu deki nach ke kaganji khan. Ayayayande asaya he yayande. So now that fire that's burning out in the sea, just guessing maybe that way, like he's gonna go that way.
Okay. So there's a couple of things. One is Deki places it out to sea. So then we can start to think about some directionals. And this is where it gets tricky because yun, just like we said, yun in front of something is to completion. That will switch to yunde if you're like, I'm gonna finish working on it, right? But in this case, it's the yun as in the shore. And it's very hard to tell which one it is, right? So yeah, and now that fire burning way out to sea, yunde asaya he. Anybody know asaya he?
I like to wish for.
Yes, so he wants it to come to shore, So with the repetition of yunde, we got to think that it's the directional one, right? So it's burning far out to sea. Raven really wants it to come to shore. You guys want to keep going on this? You want to switch to the perfector? You want to just do this? Okay, I think this is fun. Guk natu what? Kesh ituj yai no like kesh ni tuj ayat yai datach tu wasaku. If you haven't read yet, please go ahead and read. But if everybody's read, then we'll go back.
Awe tse het at chant awe uguch ne yudeki de kwishedach idakin yu an ach jinach yanyak yasayek chan an ayu yu jinach kegaganch.
Okay. Whatever parts you can translate for us, and we'll go.
Also, that thing over there, he kept going, kept walking.
Yeah, wow. Okay, what we will do, well, let's do this one line at a time, like kind of chunks, right? And then nay. Anybody know what the nay part is? It's kind of a fun one. A good translation would be, hey. Okay. Awetsu hatet chant awe ukutch. So with hate at, this is really interesting because it could mean this one, or it could mean these ones. And it's a bit of an ambivalent sort of directional. So we've got ya and we. He is somewhere in between them. So you have yata, heta, waita, and sometimes you just get this T that pops up on the end, right? So in this case, I would probably say, and then these ones, right? Or it could be this one. It's really hard to tell, but just knowing the story a little bit. These ones, and then we get hunt, away, ukutch. So he keeps going up to these ones, right? So that's what this one is saying. He keeps going up to these ones and saying, hey, right? And so there's different ways to interpret this one. With hate at, we might say, they got to be kind of close to him, right? So he keeps going up to the ones who are near him. There's a couple different ways to sort of pull that one out. There's some complicated stuff going on. And then we got this one. Yudeki kshetak itekin. Yukan achjinach yan yasayek. What do you guys think?
Maybe you'll fly out there.
Yeah, maybe you'll fly out there.
Maybe you'll bring the fire back to me.
Yeah, right. So, so I can have it, right? And so this yasayek is to, you're going to drag it in or you're going to bring it in, right? Yudeki shetak itekin. And so what this is saying is like, maybe you'll fly way out there, right? And so this is really interesting to think about how we're putting these verbs into, like itekin.
Who's talking?
Oh, this is Yéil.
Yéil.
Mm-hmm.
What?
Yéil?
Yeah.
Yéil is talking to somebody?
Yeah.
Well,
And just for context of all this, for the story, oops. In the context of this story, he's asking all the birds. That's what he's doing at this particular point. And that's why he's asking them to fly out there. And so maybe you'll fly way out there. Yuchan achchi nach yan yasayek. So I can have that fire. And then ʼaan ayu yudekinach kekaganch.
That fire that's burning high way out there.
Yeah, wow. It's burst. And so that's what the K is doing, right? It's bursting up. So also like you read a bunch of different versions of this story and you listen to some of the old people the way they talked about it. He's out there on the Aleutians and he sees a volcano. That's what he sees. Okay. Next reader, you got a short one. Gook, if you haven't read yet. Guess these right there.
Aadé.
Okay.
Bring that. Don't bring that over here. No.
Okay. Hada could also be said hadla, hado. Right, so this is the response he gets. And then kef ade is a shortcut, really good shortcut. No way. No way. Right, so someone asks you to do something, kef ade. No way. But it could also be a very short way to say it can't happen. It's not going to happen. Okay. You okay? Yeah, hot claw. Yeah, or a hot glaw as well. It's also a hot glaw. Okay. Duk.
Cellach tua ushku, tle you yandush cage.
Sheesh.
I don't want that. I don't want that. Tle you is to go way over there or in that direction. Yandush cage. Yandush cage. Sounds like something like flying, kind of, maybe, or
Okay.
I don't know.
So the tle is then.
Oh.
So there's different ways that it could be used, but it's usually just sort of saying like, so he's going around, and then this is all part of the quote, right? Gee, no way, I don't want to, right? And so that when it's just by itself, there's again different ways. Like I don't want it is perfect, is a great, or I don't like it. But in this case, if people are asking, like he's asking everybody to do this, and they just keep saying, and that would be, I don't want to. Right? Same thing. Like someone could say, hey, go paint my fence. I don't want to. Right? And what about this? You yandistage.
Is that ka with that ch?
Yep.
Every time, or?
Yeah. So when you put a suffix onto a verb that ends with a, it's going to switch to a. So that's where you're going to get the H part, right? So, and then if we just took the d out of there, we would have a yausaka in a perfective, right? Perfective becomes often more recognizable. So in this case, how would we translate then? Yandu.
They said, or they kept saying.
Yeah, or yeah, they kept saying. So with the d, there's multiple ways. You could say they kept saying, you could say people kept saying, or you could just say it's what it keeps being said to. It's always interesting to think about how to, as a translator, you spend a lot of your time in between Tlingit and English. It keeps being said to him. People keep saying to him, right? He keeps hearing it. Okay. Decided to us go Yéi Daaduneiyí.
Wanene sawe aku hunt uwagut. Is that like, it's like at some point he went, or Raven, or they went to, I don't know, no, is that like a bird?
Dakosa Johan.
It's a little owl without tufts, I think.
And it's extra little, right? The cuck is already little. Now it's cuck. So it's a little owl, right? So yeah, and this wanene sawe, or waneni sawe sometimes, or wani sawe, or wane sawe. That's a really good thing to learn how to use. This is how you jump ahead in a story. At some point. And then here's the hunt uagut. And once we got like the main character, we could usually just assume it's Raven. It's gotta be, right? And so this is, sometimes you're gonna have an ush thrown in there, which will definitely point out that it's Raven, but until there's like a definitive subject switch, it'll probably mostly likely be Raven. Okay.
So how do you know who's coming to who there? Or what bird is, what's coming to what, I guess?
Because usually they would tell you if someone else is doing something, right? So in this case, like when we go back to the story, they mentioned Raven. Then he starts going around talking to people. And so then they just become people, right? And so usually this is how Tlingit likes to operate. So like we just sort of put Raven up here, especially Raven, like now this is a Raven story. There certainly could be other people doing things, but then we would probably call them out just by saying, and so usually you would, to do this effectively as a storyteller, you would probably throw a CH on the end of something just to say, now someone else is going to do something, right? And then this petrel, it was him. He went up to him, Raven. And so because it switches to mostly third person pronouns in stories, that's why the ush pops up there to say, oh yeah, this person we keep talking about, this main character. But then, you know, it's pretty much, it's like default is going to be the main character doing stuff. But then you'll do something using ku'a or awe or the ch after them to say, then they did this thing. Then we'll probably just go back to Raven doing more stuff. Natu.
Aya kak aya dusu aya yayat shuguna yak. The little owl's beak was really long. The little owl.
Okay, and then shugunach is at first, right? Yep. So this little owl is beak. Yayat is long. Klayat is tall. Sheesh. Kaitia. Gook.
Aadé Yéi Daaduneiyí. And then he did it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, Aadé, he's working on it.
Okay.
Right? He's doing it, right? Yeah.
You a slúde oa a cosichat wetel koa. Something to do with on his nose.
Mm-hmm.
It was like pitch, however.
Oh, yeah.
It looked like.
Well, this akausachat, you could get there's a verb similar to like resemble or to kind of look like, but this one is to attach something to.
Oh, okay. That's what I thought it was, to look like or be like.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so and then teich is the dry pitch, or they call it pitchwood sometimes. Like it's you could buy it in these little things for fire starters because it really burns. So it's really, when pitch is running, it's kuch, and when it's dry, it's teich. And it's also a torch. Okay. Who wants this one?
Yagunch yatesh ha.
Okay.
Yagunch. Is that tobacco?
Punch with the underline G. So in this case, you're getting the CH on the end of a verb.
Oh. So that's pitch.
Yep.
Ha. Gun.
So this one, like gun, a cow, a gun is usually how we hear it, or a cow's a gun. In this case, yagunch. So it's this habitual, it's like all the time.
Look, huh?
And then the cha part is like, you're putting just some emphasis on something. Like a lot of times we could translate cha as you see, or just we could sort of pull it back to the verb to say
That
it.
pitch really burns.
Yeah, well. So that sapwood, the pitchwood, the dried pitch, however we want to translate that, that pitchwood really burns, you see. So in other words, it's flammable, right?
Yeah.
So you could say, that one's really flammable. Yeah, well. Donald Trump which the cut way ask just care what you took. Right? That's what he said. They dry up and then they just explode. Okay. I do suck sure you that.
Cut again.
Huh.
Aga away sa ye ashikawaja you on to on yidakin. So and then it was, then he instructed him, yonder fire tuch into it. You will fly with it.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, wow. And so another sort of storytelling device, aqa away, and then. So it's another way to do it. Like we're just doing a time jump, right? So aqa away is kind of a little time jump. Wana nisa away is almost like next scene. We're going to do a bigger time jump with that one. When we put the sa in there, it's the same one we saw earlier, which might have been missing a high tone. Aqa away sa. And only then, right? So now it's a little bit of a different sort of narrative device, right? It's only when that thing got done, then he instructed him. That fire, through it, tuch, right? Like just going right along through it, on, with it, yidakin, fly through the fire with it.
Is that tunach or is it the X? Is that something different?
It's very similar, but it's just sort of like right along through it, sort of like niche. So it's like, but in this, yeah, that tunach, for me, it seems like there would be sort of an enclosure a bit, maybe. Whereas tuch, but again, they're always interesting, whether it's going to be, apparently you tuch right through a fire, right? So it might have something to do with just sort of going along, but you're in the fire too. So again, whenever we get these directions, it's always just interesting to think about, right? Because I'm constantly guessing them wrong and then figuring it out by looking at the language. So, oh, you two in a fire and you yik in a tree and you're gonna ka in the gucha. Okay, that's fine, right? Okay, two more. I think that's all we have time for today.
Atuk shtikat adu k'ega tian. I know k'ega is.
Oh, you got to read to the period though. Right up the next line too.
Oh, right. Okay. Yashingit ani ya akka or ak la yech ayayech. I know k'ega is either true or strong or something like that, and shtikat is like all of it.
Mm-hmm.
And tuk, I know this is wrong, but the only thing I can think of is but. I think like tuk. Wait, that can't be right though.
But this two would be the same as this one, and so with the, it's inside of it. A tu would be inside of it. Shtikat at everything, and in this case, k'ega without the underline is true. K'ega is a little bit different, right? K'ega would be kind of like according to the way that somebody told me, right? A little bit. And then tiyan used to be. And so this one is a little, it's more complicated. than some of the other ones that I think we've seen. Tlingit ʼaan Yéil. So this world, and then we get this ʼaan. So just kind of looking at it. He made the world, right? But it's really interesting because technically this is a verb for to plane something, kind of. But like, you know, like you're going to make a flat surface on something. But shayech is something that we hear more commonly with like Raven making the world. But so everything obeyed him. And so it's a really interesting point, because when we really examine these Raven stories, we see how we, like when I used to work with these, with Marge and George on these, and Marge would be like, here he goes again, he's gonna get what he wants. And he always does, right? Just by talking people into things, and sometimes doing it with just like really fancy grammar. Like so keep studying grammar, because then pretty soon people are going to do everything you want. I mean, that's what I'm guessing, right? Because then you'll know how to use all these horatives and other things. Okay, last one of the night.
Dak udikin ade ashkayach du slude kachat wetes. He flew out there to it. According to his words, I guess, I'm thinking again, to his nose attached the pitch.
Yeah, oh wow. So again, we're getting these third person pronouns. Once we see ashkayach, we know who told him to do it, right? So dak wudikin, he flew out there. Aadé, towards it. Ashkayach, the raven told him to. So chayach would be like, it depends how it's being used, but usually like in the case, like if you did something like you cook some food and I asked you why you cooked it that way, and you said, I cooked it like they said to. Right, so that's how the chayach is often used, like the way somebody told me to, or the way, you know, especially once we get this instructing verb, then once this chayach is going to push back to that, like he flew out the way that he was told, right, according to the way he was told. And then, yeah, that sapwood is attached to his beak, the pitchwood. Yak, hey, sheesh. So that was fun. I like to do translation work because they show us just lots and lots on how they just put these concepts together. It's a fun story. We got about a third of the way through it, maybe. So you just have to hold on the cliffhanger for what's going to happen. But I also want to get back to the perfective. But I know we take a slow crawl through that part, because I do know some of that stuff gets brain tangling. So Wednesday, we'll start doing our 10 instructional sentences. However you want to do it. It's just good to share. It's good to try stuff out. Email if you need help, or try out the Discord if you like that thing. I've been trying to think of different question and answer forums, ways for us to communicate, ways for us to schedule sessions and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm not gonna throw a whole bunch of extra things on people. Just trying to just use things that are out there to see if they're helping us. You could also just do emails, like if you want to do a reply all to any of those emails I sent to you folks, you could certainly do that. And just if you have specific questions or anything, I'm happy to help. Or you could just email me directly, just whatever you want.
So the perfective stuff that we were doing last Wednesday, is that part of a set that you haven't given us yet? That you don't want to give us yet?
No, I was just taking a break from it, that's all.
Okay, but if I wanted to review what we did last Wednesday, I could not take notes on all that. And is it someplace else that we were looking at, or is it something we'll get later?
Well, so we're going to come back to, and we're going to do the ones with the thematic prefix on them. And so the only thing, the final part in the perfective series is moving through all the different classifier combinations with a thematic prefix. And then I'll put the handout out there in its entirety, which will have all of the answers.
Okay. I'll work up my sentences.
Ah.
Can I tell you guys all something really cool? ʼāde Yéi Daaduneiyí. So all these stellar jays have come inland. It's so cool because they don't care if the border is closed, right? And they're being seen everywhere in Teslin, Haynes Junction, Carcross, Whitehorse, and yeah, it's an invasion of Eoshk, which is pretty cool.
Right? They weren't there before because their inland speakers don't really use because there's no cheshk. So maybe the cheshk will bring a different color, a whole different color. Okay.
There's a million pictures of them on Facebook.
Everybody's favorite new color, huh?
Kuyech, wait, koa kutzeti dakka. Yant tlaus tlachanakawa nikwe kuyech. Gashweta ayat tagish yukatangi. Has yukatangi khoe has outlayech. Just the camp robber, right? It's like a gray jay. It looks a lot like it. And that's the one I think Ido said speaks Tagish. I'll tell you when people are coming. Okay. Kalchish Yuhan. Zitaya Klasatin.
Cheese.
Cheese.
Yeah, Klasatin.
Cheese.